My name's Chris.
What the fuck was that shit?
This is the Washing Up Podcast. Look, this is probably going to be our fastest podcast ever. And, so we are a bit late today.
Hi.
We've just, the last week, we just decided that we needed to have a little bit of a breather, go do some other shit, you know.
Look, it's been a shit week.
It hasn't been a great week.
My eldest cat, Polly, died last week. She was old. She was on her way out.
Frequently guesting on the pod by coming up and bumping the microphone.
Yes, we just heard her random fur rubs.
So it's just been a week.
It's been a week, and usually I turn to Bake Off for a bit of solace.
And this week, so to lift it, I sort of mentioned it on Twitter. I was in Albury. I went away for a couple of days just for the second week of my week off, just to sort of have a couple of days of just doing not much apart from a wonderful food tour of Albury.
Sowing his wild oats in Albury, because if you want to go wild, nothing says go wild like Albury, Australia.
Whoa, it was amazing. So I was on Tuesday night when it was on, I was sitting in a hotel room watching Bake Off on a laptop, and what I saw was terrifying. Now, we are recording this on the weekend because we hadn't had time to sit down and watch it, obviously. So we sat down. Kristie hadn't seen it. She just heard me rant.
Look, it really is a metaphor for how the week went.
It kind of is.
Just started off with shitty brownies.
This will
ended in a cake of disappointment.
The cake of disappointment.
The producers did nothing to make this week work, though. First of all, you give 90 minutes to Brownies and no strong, explicit instructions to not fuck with it. Please, refrain from, adding cheesecake to your Brownies.
We don't need you to flora this shit.
Just make some chocolate brownies. Simple, nice, delicious. Maybe add some nuts. Don't go nuts.
Pistachios, pecans, something.
Obviously, the bakers didn't read between the lines because 90 minutes, and they've gone, you know what? We're just going to fucking invoke the spirit of, who's that dude that went home, the eccentric that did everything too much? Rowan. We're just going to invoke the spirit of Rowan and, create an ancient Aztec meal in the middle of a brownie we're going to serve in 90 minutes.
I thought that Lottie went very flora. I'm going to do a cheesecake on top of my brownie. Why not? It was the most batshit bizarre week. It was...
And then the producers go, you know how we're going to top this off? A white chocolate cake. Because nothing says, I'm celebrating than white chocolate.
It is the most divisive. Look, it is the most divisive of the chocolates because I don't count ruby chocolate as chocolate. But
when the high point of an episode is Bubka.
Or panettone, as it's known in the business.
when Babka becomes your safe haven.
So the way I'm going to we're going to jump all over.
This really was Bake Off 2020, wasn't it?
We're going to jump all over the place on this episode. We're not going to.
The pandemic really hit hard.
We're not going in any form of detail. When the winner of Star Baker's critique in the Showstopper is. The flavours were there, but you needed a bit more of them. It's well made, but, there was not really... The flavour is far too subtle. Fix that up. That's your Star Baker, everybody.
It's like... Because I presume they're all living together now, in a quarantine COVID situation, their off days have synced, much like women living... together.
So everybody's on cycle is what you're saying.
They're on cycle, so I'm hoping next week is that we're going to get really brilliant.
No, it's the week after on cycle. It's going to be a bit better.
A bit better, but not perfect.
Not quite. You're looking at 2 weeks' time for perfection. But the bad news is that cycles
14 days.
But that cycles it right back around to the grand final being an off week. God damn it. What are we going to get for the grand final? I'm terrified.
At least separate them into 2 camps so we can even this out.
That'd be good. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the highlight of the whole episode.
Some people baking well on the new moon and some baking well on the full moon. Fuck me.
It really is for all of us a blood moon. Anyway, let's talk about the highlight of this whole episode. Noel Fielding's shirt was an absolute delight.
The hosts were on point. The hosts were perfect.
The hosts were fantastic. Look,
there's nothing...
Matt Lucas and Noel Fielding have been the only thing really redeeming this series. They've been great. And this episode, they were working so hard.
Crawl and poo leaf. It started well out of the gate.
And continued from there. Also another name for what those brownies look like. But I think my favourite part was towards the very end when Noel offered himself up as a sacrifice to save
Noel.
Sura and Lottie. And Matt Lucas turns around and goes, no. The allure of me will wear off. Don't dump him. But I loved Noel's shirt with all the fruit with the smile.
Yeah.
It was super cool. I want that shirt. Now, they didn't listen to Prue because Prue did say, try not to over-decorate the top.
Oh my God, they're telling you explicitly what you need to not do. And that's go nuts. Like literally and figuratively. Like maybe add some walnuts, maybe add some pistachios. They're always good with a brownie.
So Linda went with the treats of Christmas past because nothing screams Christmas to me like a brownie.
It was fucking haunted what came out of
It
it.
was very haunted.
I don't know if it was Christmas or she just invoked an ancient Mithras ritual and summoned an ancient demon from beyond because fucking hell.
I liked Noel's conversation with Mark because that was when Noel and Mark with a C. Again, you can all pick that. You can tell the difference in my pronunciation. So Mark did his praline brownies, which didn't really work. They looked crap, in all honesty. But what I loved about this was the conversation when he asked Noel about being a vampire.
Yes. Which got me hoping that like Taika Waititi got Noel into the next episode.
What we do in the shadows.
Of what we do in the shadows.
But like you said about, I just drag people off into the bushes and, drink their blood.
Like we've had the Evan, we've had the Tilda, we need the Noel.
We do need the Noel. It would be the most perfect mix ever. Peter. Now look, a lot of people love Peter. And Peter's a very lovely, lovely guy.
Yeah.
I can't warm to him as a baker. Look, they went, Peter's going healthy. Now, first of all, no, he wasn't. He's making brownies still. He just put fig on them.
Which is quite high in sugar. And if you've got diabetes, it's still not a good choice.
And secondly, you're making a brownie, which is supposed to be crunchy.
Yeah.
Coating them in fig is not the answer
No.
to making them go crunchy.
I mean, they looked nice and they'd probably make a nice little, like, slice. Like a chocolate
Well, there were a couple
fig
of
slice.
There were a couple of times where
It was mostly cinnamon.
There were a couple of... It was really cinnamon, it turned out. A couple of times where Prue turned around to people and went, that's a lovely tray bake. There was with Dave, she did that too. She goes, she's made a lovely tray bake.
Yeah.
I wanted a brownie. Lovely tray bake. Sura's literally was a tray bake because she couldn't take it out. Now, at this point, we went back around and we looked at the idea of just what Peter did. Because they were trying to... Paul was trying to be, Paul, which is a Peter fanboy. He's a massive Peter fanboy. But he did sort of have to say to him, it feels like there's a lot. Are you sure about that? And Peter's like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
I don't think we need to dissect each bake.
We're not going to, don't panic.
No, because I just feel like we need to get to the judging because there's not a lot that went on apart from too much.
I mean, Noel did talk about the fact that he's never baked. And I'm like, never baked or never been baked. Because either or. Look, the way to sum it up is really easy. Lottie was a disaster from word one. And I love Lottie. We all know that. A queen is it, but she was shit this week. She was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Hermine. We do need to talk about Hermine, though, because when Paul went over to Hermine, she goes, how long are you going to bake them for? She goes, so 10 minutes on one side, and then I'm going to turn them and 10 minutes on the other side. And Paul goes, what do you mean 10 minutes on the other side? She's like, I'm going to turn the tray around in the oven. And Paul's like, why? That lowers the temperature of the oven?
Yeah.
And, I'm sitting there going, what do you mean you're going to turn your tray around in the oven?
To get it to bake evenly. Obviously, she's worried about the oven.
Well, I wouldn't be that worried about that oven. The other question that we really have to ask is...
Would it really matter, though?
No.
Maybe it would have at least appeased a baking god.
I'm sure. Why were there so many attempts at s'mores?
Oh, apparently this good old-fashioned UK treat that is... It just...
I mean, at least Laura acknowledged that it's American, but she even apparently it's... I'm like, apparently...
It's definitely American.
Yeah, but she was like, apparently it's where you've got... Apparently it's where you've got marshmallow melt... It's marshmallow and a cracker. That's what it is.
Graham cracker.
So we're dealing with marshmallow and graham crackers, not brownies. And s'mores is not just code word for I melted some marshmallow. That's not actually... Melted marshmallow would do.
I used to do that in the microwave as a kid.
Yeah, so did I.
For fun.
That was good.
Well, let's do that tonight.
We will, okay. Evening sorted. We're just making our own plans.
Just really partying here. What are you doing tonight? I'm melting some marshmallows in a microwave.
Can I...
It really tops off the
Rock off. Can I just point out as well, Sura, when she was talking about her brownies being raw, and let's face it, it's a theme with Sura tonight.
Baking optional.
There you go. There's the title of the episode, Baking Optional. She goes, my brownies are still raw, and she looks at the camera and goes, it's my fault, really. Who else's fault could it be? You were the one baking. She's like, it's my fault, really? I'm like, what the fuck? Like...
As opposed to, like, you know...
Is it Noel's fault?
Nothing is Noel's fault.
No, nothing is ever Noel's fault. Noel offered to cheat for her. He's like, I do the time calls. I can help you out with this.
It seems to be a running thing with our new hosts these days,
Now,
isn't it?
it
Like,
is.
They get a bit of power.
They just want to
Suddenly
cheat.
they think,
Alan wants to cheat. No.
look, if any place the producers could have allowed the host to cheat, I think this is probably the signature. They should have allowed it to happen. Just an extra half an hour.
And let's face it, Noel Fielding has a history of times and cheating. If you remember back to Taskmaster, where he stopped the clock while they were doing the gazebo challenge behind Alex's back. And no, it wasn't me. It was caught on camera doing it. So Laura had spent a lot of time talking about how great her flavours were and how great her brownies were, only to find out she'd made a soup. Which I thought was fun. And Lottie made a
souffle.
But Lottie made a better soup because Lottie's soup contained that rarest of rare ingredients, wet freezer juice. She's like, it's so hot when I put it in there, I melted the freezer.
Oh my.
What happened? It dripped down. What did we get? Wet freezer juice.
That's sad.
As Lottie said, it looked like an actual car crash. And it did. When they panned down, it looked like the victims. It was great. So the judgment. Peters looked attractive on the top. Too much cinnamon. It was different. It was risky. And Paul went, okay. And I'm like, you're really trying hard not to bag him out, aren't you? Laura. Prue said that she clearly took them out too early. Paul said it was a mess. Too much Italian meringue, way too sweet and underbaked. Beyond that, fine. Sura, she dropped one tray in the oven, which they only slightly showed you and they didn't make a big deal out of it. But turns out she destroyed that tray. They were tough. Paul didn't like the flavours. Prue did. And when they went, what's the citrus? And she goes, it's ruby chocolate. Sura has a problem because she's used ruby chocolate in almost every episode somewhere. And this episode, twice. Neither time did it go well.
Well, it's obvious she's just attracting, like the wrath of
the gods.
The gods.
The chocolate gods are like, this is not real. Prue liked the flavour, but said, but your bake's not right. Now, that's not really what you want to hear.
Again, baking optional.
Mark, they said, that's with a K, you can tell. That looked neat. It tasted like a brownie. Who would have thought the highest praise in this would have been it tastes like a brownie? It tastes like the thing it's supposed to. What the fuck?
Up until that point, nothing had tasted like a brownie.
And this was a rarity in the judging. Every time they went to a new person, Paul Hollywood was clearly more visibly pissed.
And Mark with a C copped it.
I know. So they did say that Mark with a K, the biscuit base was too thick and the flavour was good, but the texture was wrong. So again, that was the praise. They said were messy. Prue liked the raspberry, but they said the white chocolate was far too much and there was too much happening. Linda, they said it was a sponge more than a brownie, and she's been, thank you, because that's Linda.
At least she got it in a...
I know.
Like, it came out as something that
It didn't look like a soup. Dave, pretty even, but overbaked, and they said it was a sponge. This is where she said, Prue said, that's a great tray bake. It lacked all of the elements of a brownie. It wasn't stodgy. There was no crack. Apart from not resembling a brownie in any way. It's a good brownie. Mark with a C. They don't look very good. And he's like, no, they don't.
This is the point where I think...
yeah, he lost his shit.
Like, Paul Hollywood just goes, fuck me. If you can't bake a brownie... And I'm sad it was directed at Mark with a C. But I feel like it was for
It
everyone.
was
in the
everyone.
tent.
It was aimed at everyone. It was, if you can't make a brownie, we've got a problem. And they're all going, hush. And I was like, no, fucking accurate. You're all shit. They said that right in the very, very middle of his was squidgy and the flavours were okay, but the rest of it was shit. Lottie. Prue said they don't look great, but Paul did a Paul and just said, it looks like you dropped them.
If only she had. Maybe it'd look...
Paul asked for a straw, which Lottie went, I don't have a straw, I've got a spoon. You can use to soup it up. They said the raspberry was sharp, there was too much cheesecake. The flavours were actually good.
Okay, let's pause this here.
I know.
You've made a brownie. You might know you've gone wrong when you critique his too much cheesecake.
Again, this is so Flora. It's ridiculous. What have you done there on your sponge? Some macarons and a sugar tower. Well, your sugar tower's a bit overdone. What was the challenge again? A sponge. What was your challenge? A brownie. What's your biggest problem? Too much cheesecake. Fucking hell. And that was when they cut back to Lottie afterwards and she goes, if any one of us had just made a normal chocolate brownie, we would be probably Star Baker. And Mark with the line of the week and probably of the series. What are people at home thinking of us?
Yep. Well, if you want to know, Mark, tune into this podcast. Like, personally, you guys are wonderful, but we are going to take the piss out of your bakes because, quite frankly...
Look, I really actually like the Bakers this year, and I said this earlier on, I didn't really like the Bakers last season. I didn't. I really like these Bakers.
Yeah.
But come on. This was an absolute disaster of an episode, and if anyone was hoping to get work off the back of their baking in this episode...
Oh, my God. Everyone cancels
Oh,
their
wow.
orders.
I know. So the technical. Paul Hollywood asked everyone to make a panettone. It's the babka, actually, but if you ask Antonio, it's from Australian, it's a panettone. 2.5 hours.
Yep.
The instructions were make the dough, which, again, given what had just happened with the brownies, I thought was harsh.
Well, you'd hope that because there's a bit more structure, there is a fairer time limit put through. And it wasn't a play on a babka. This wasn't a signature. This was very clear chocolate and hazelnuts.
Yep.
Like, that's just...
Make a babka. I want this to look like a babka.
Yeah.
And not like, as Lottie's did, a Viking longship.
I don't understand why she just didn't tuck the ends in.
I don't know why people didn't look at the tin that was in front of them and go, at some point, I'm going to have to put this in. Surah! What the fuck was Surah making? Like, hers, it was, you had to make it 40 by 30. But then it went longer. So Surah's was almost 3/4 of the bench. And she looked at the tin and went,
I'll just cut it and twist it in half.
I've got all of this babka left over. I don't know about you, but they give you the quantities.
Yeah.
It's probably an issue if you've got 3/4 of the ingredients left over in a pile going, it's all over there. Oh, I don't need that.
No, that's fine.
No, you definitely do need that, Surah.
Yeah.
That's your problem. This whole challenge was worth it for one thing. Noel having a conversation with Mark.
People. Mark with a K. You don't deserve Star Baker simply for this. If the Goblin King says, come live with me in my Goblin City, you say yes. If Noel Fielding says, let's get naked, you say yes. It's as simple as that.
It started off when he said about free.
It's as simple as that.
And he's like, how free are you? I mean, how free are any of us? Are you free? What's the freest thing you've ever done? Have you ever been that free? Maybe we should be naked. Should we be naked together? Maybe have you ever got naked in a public space? Let's do it right now. Let's be naked on Bake Off.
Yes.
And
yes
Mark's just going, and Kristie's going, no, you fool, say yes right now.
What part of I need to finish this bubka or get naked with Noel Fielding? Don't you understand?
What's going to look
a pretty straightforward yes.
What's going to look better on a resume? Star Baker in possibly the worst British Bake Off week we've ever seen. Ran around a tent naked with Noel Fielding. I think the Noel Fielding is going to win.
Because he's obviously going to drag you into a bush.
Completely. And then feed on your blood, as we found out. But, it's just, like the fact that some people who have been, and again, Lottie, a queen, but her common sense has been great so far, all series. She's been the voice of sense. Yeah. She's been the voice of reason. Maybe when I prove this, it's going to rise in the middle and level it up.
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
Is complete batshit.
When in doubt, magic.
Yeah, when in doubt, a wizard did it. But how did the third wizard? Okay, sorry, didn't realise it was a
wizard.
Like tree wizard. I don't understand what any of them were thinking, really.
Well, Linda got hers well, and I was really happy with her because she's like, I've never seen one. I don't even know what it looks
But
like.
Linda just followed the instructions exactly as written. Everybody else, like,
left it up for interpretation, like the signature bake.
who doesn't look at the tin? Like, there's clearly a tin in front of you you're going to have to use. Your bake should go in it.
That said, I feel I would be one of the ones that didn't put 2 and 2 together with the tin. Because I don't read through instructions. I'm just kind of like, my Aries moon kicks in and I'm like, okay, this step, then this step, then this step. And then you get to the 5th step, you go, oh, maybe I should have plaited it like the size of that tin.
But
I would have unplaited it and then replatted it.
That's the point. What you would have done is gone, no, I need to replat this. Not just cut it there and leave it, or let's make it a Viking longship and hope the middle rises up from it.
Like, surely Sura should have been forced. She had raw bacon because if you take that piece that she did not cook,
She didn't cook.
It was raw.
Again, baking optional. But what I really like, the thing is, you're not also putting yourself forward as one of Britain's best 12 home bakers.
No.
Like, they are. You should have a spatial awareness in an oven should be a thing you do. The other thing that we got, which I think was passed over really quickly, and I was disappointed with how fast they passed over it, Noel reading the instructions like it was a GNS opera. Like, I have decided that Noel Fielding needs to write a light operetta in the style of GNS in tribute to Bake Off. Because the way that he read the Bubka instructions, as though he was performing Gilbert and Sullivan, was stunning.
What about, doesn't have to write anything new. Paul Hollywood and Prue Leaf books obviously need an Audible version. Mix the two.
Done.
Audible. Operable.
Operable. And what you've also got there too is you've got Matt Lucas in there with him. And again, as we said last week, Matt Lucas was in Les Mis. So done. Sorted. Let's get to the fucking judgment, shall we?
Yes.
Peters, they said, looked good, but was very small. The swirl was good and it was a nice bake. That was going to be, again, the critique they gave of Peters was interesting because they gave it a brilliant critique, but it didn't come close to winning. Lottie, they said there were a few issues. Wasn't overbaked, though, and the flavour was okay. So, yay. Linda's was a model bubka. Nice bake, good shine, good flavour. Sura had issues with the plat. It looked very dense and there was a very tight dough. No shit, because she did a very small plat for a very long way down the bench and used one small plat rather than the big twist, which everyone else did. Laura, very cakey feel, but good flavour. Dave, very dense and it needed proving. Mark with a C, nice size, a bit dry. Amines, they said the plat wasn't right through it, very underproved, but again, good flavour. Mark, they said the height was there, the taste was good, but it needed a bit more chocolate running through it. So in terms of the judging, Lottie was 9th, Dave was 8th, Sura was 7th, Mark was 6th, Amin was 5th, Peter was 4th, Mark was 3rd, second was... Who was second? Oh, Laura, that's right. Laura was second, and Linda was first. And Laura had no fucking idea how the hell she got second, by the way. Laura was stunned. And Linda was like, wow, I've never even seen one. That's amazing.
I was sure Mark was going to get second. Like Laura...
So was I.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the technical. Yeah, I know. We're quick on this one, because...
Not technical. Showstopper.
Showstopper, sorry. But, yeah. We're quick on this one, but... Fuck it, there wasn't much to talk about. 2 layers of a white chocolate celebration cake. Sure. 4 hours.
Look, the term celebration and white chocolate, just, first of all, that's an oxymoron. Like that's not a celebration, that's just sad. Why? Why, producers? You're setting us up for some sadness.
So I'll quickly run through what they each made and then we'll just quickly go through. So Dave made a strawberry splash white chocolate Fraser cake. Amin made a lemon and white chocolate cake. Laura called hers chocolate heaven cake. Linda's was an English rose cake.
You know why Laura's was a chocolate heaven cake? Because it's where all the chocolate from this episode went.
Yes, exactly. Lottie's was Nana and Papa's Sapphire Anniversary cake. Mark did a white chocolate and raspberry buttercream celebration cake. Mark, with a K, a bake-off birthday. Peter did a graduation cake. And Sura did a strawberry and white chocolate celebration cake. So let's get into quickly what they all did. Laura had blackcurrant jam through hers. It was for her wedding anniversary, which is 2 years, which I believe is Pizza Stone.
Yes, it really is the pizza stone of wedding anniversaries.
When they asked her what she did to celebrate, we all know the answer was they're in lockdown, so nothing. They were in lockdown. I'd like to think that she said, my husband sent me a photo of him using the pizza oven.
Yes, they both made a wood-fired pizza where they were and shared it over Zoom. Exactly.
It's like, the pizza oven is sad. It misses Mummy.
She gets daily updates, like people get with their children. Like from probably preschools these days. Before they used to get just dropped off at a preschool, and who the fuck knows what happens. You get stuck on a monkey bar for 3 hours for half the day, and at the end of it, you're suffering trauma, and your parents pick you up as if nothing's happened. No, these days there are all photos and updates. Like, here's little Zachariah, and he has been experimenting with the colour serene. Cerulean, that's the word.
No, the colour serene is the new one. My low light of my time at preschool was there was a kid who was being really nasty and mean to me. And those really heavy-duty red tubes that you built the play equipment out of with the black corners, and you could move them around the mobile? I picked one of those up and clocked him in the head. Okay. Really hard. Really hard.
Look, I just remember being very disappointed. When you got, allocated your picture that was like for your pigeonhole and then your like little sleeping cot and whatever else. Mine was a bat and ball, and other people had like butterflies and fairies, and I had a fucking bat and ball. I mean, I wasn't a sports ball person, still not a sports ball person.
It's your love of cricket, really.
It's like, come on.
So Lottie had practiced hers.
Just give me like fucking Wonder Woman. Could I have brought my own symbol?
You should have been allowed to.
Why didn't I know to advocate for my own symbol?
I don't know. You need to go back and tell young Kristie.
Yeah.
Lottie,
that's what I'll make use of a
time travel for, and you could do pictures. Lottie had practiced hers 15 to 18 times. Now, Prue gave out some advice that I felt summed up this week. You only have to be not the worst.
It really feels like...
Paul and Prue gave up this week.
Everyone was sinking into the worst. Like the judges, I don't know how the hosts avoided it, probably illicit drugs, but everyone else was just at a really low point when the judges are just going, look, you just don't have to be the worst.
About 3/4 of the way through this episode, everyone had acknowledged this is not good.
No.
Like, everyone acknowledged it. Now, Sura had temper chocolate ruffles on hers, strawberry and lemon jam, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of tricky elements there. Who knew the sponge? Now, what pissed me off about this was Sura, there was one point where we're watching it, and I turned around to you because Sura cut her cake in half to put the cream in it, and they're showing a long camera angle, and you can see quite clearly that Sura's cake is not baked.
Like, that should have been a point where she goes, you know what? I'm just going to pop that back in for 10 minutes.
She cut it in half. It's quite clear that it's raw. And she just went, nah.
Yeah, fine.
And slathered it with all the stuff. And then, what was she expecting? That the cream was going to cook it? Peter was dropping chunks of white chocolate around it inside. Now, this is interesting because it was celebrating his brother's graduation. We've talked a lot about his brother.
And his inability to process wheat.
Gluten, yeah. So we talked about the fact that about the baking, and we asked, is he trying to kill his brother? I really think he hates his brother because, first of all, we're talking about all the baking, and that's tempting him and teasing him and tormenting him. But now, he gave him because he couldn't have a cake because of lockdown. I'm making him a graduation cake now. He can't fucking have it. You're in lockdown.
And still couldn't eat it because it's wheat-based.
I know. It's like, you're a douche.
With brothers like these.
You hate your brother. With the rest of them, Mark very loudly announced that he had a bad day yesterday and he clearly struggles with cakes. And I'm like, oh, God, you're painting a picture of confidence right there, man.
Maybe he just started to doubt himself because Paul Hollywood's like, if he can't cook a brownie, what can you bake?
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, what can I bake? He's gone home and had
He's gone metaphysical.
Yeah.
Linda was doing a tribute to her daughter, who had special needs and died. And it was really, like, I loved her idea. And then she was praising Paul's instructions for the technical the day before. And Paul's like, do you have any of my books? And she goes, as a matter of fact, I do. And he goes, you're going to do well.
Look, her only mistake was to go, you know what? I'm doing a chocolate collar.
Oh.
Now, what I found is, what's he say? Peter did a chocolate collar, but he just essentially wiped white chocolate across the collar. He didn't try any fancy lace
No patterns.
Linda tried some fancy lace work. You could just tell, like, that's...
It was too hot.
Too hot.
You know it's too hot when Paul
working.
Hollywood acknowledges in their voiceover, it's a very hot day.
Yeah.
Because when they acknowledge that in voiceover,
you know
there's a problem.
Yeah.
So I also loved here that Matt Lucas basically broke the fourth wall of Bake Off completely. He turned around and he goes, you know what the problem is with this show? He said, they tell you to make sweet things. Then they tell you off because you've made it too sweet. Why is it? Because you made us make a cake out of white chocolate. What are you expecting? What you really could have done is you could have cut that with mud, and that would have made it so much more palatable. You made us make a cake of white chocolate. It's like you can almost hear the producers going, "That's funny. That's hilarious." Matt, shut up.
Well, he did a good Prue Leaf impersonation and a good Paul Hollywood.
It was a great one.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, with a K, did a tribute to his wife and her birthday, but I was more into it for the Marula Fruit Liquor, which gets the elephants drunk.
If only he made a celebration of drunk elephants.
That would have been fantastic.
Then it wouldn't matter if it was on a jaunty angle. Maybe Sarah should have done drunk elephants.
Maybe she should just fill it with booze.
She's Muslim. So.
Yeah, but she could have filled it with booze. She didn't eat it.
That's true, yeah.
She didn't need to eat it. And the judges love getting drunk. Laura needed to restart because her first lot of cakes looked more like souffles. So David went with a strawberry white chocolate Fraser cake with a creme mousseline inside, soaked in amaretto. But, and again, the only criticism they had of his was that his cakes looked very brown.
I know.
Like, the flavour was great, but your cakes look brown.
Probably because the white chocolate
burns. Yeah. Now, they all started making the collars, which, as we said, that's fucking stupid. Only Peter's worked. We then noticed at this point that Suru went back to ruby chocolate. Let's get to the judgment. That's literally all we got for that challenge. Mark, Prue Leaf absolutely loved it, as does Paul Hollywood. They said, but the flavours were there, but they needed more of them. But well made. But where's your flavour? That's your star baker, folks. Lottie, they said it looked good and the geo that she did in the side worked really well. They said the flavour was good, but the cake itself was overbaked. Everyone either overbaked or underbaked this week too.
Yeah.
Like, very rare that anyone baked it dead on.
Baking optional.
Oh no, baking is optional. Speaking of baking optional, Sura's cakes were a horrible shape, very raw and not edible.
Great.
Fantastic. Dave's, they said it looked good, the sponge was dark, and they're like, it tastes great. Decent cake. The cream inside is amazing, but like the sponges were a bit brown. Okay. Well, then what's wrong with it? Nothing. Linda's cake was good. Paul Hollywood loved it, but they said the piping on the outside was absolutely atrocious. And it was. It was an apocalypse cake. Mark's was neat. The sponge was dense, but the flavour was good, as was the raspberry curd in the middle. Peter's collar looked beautiful. The cake was well baked. Paul thought it was clever and sort of praised him. Prue, though, commented about the chunks of white chocolate and said, it's like toffee. It's gluing my jaw shut. I like the difference there. Like, Prue didn't out and out say there's issues here, but she went, like, my jaw is gluing shut because of the way you've done the chunks. And Paul's like, it's amazing.
Maybe because he just likes to have everyone shut up so he can keep talking.
Got to be the answer. I mean, messy at the bottom. It looked like two different cakes, and it really did. And then we got the Pruegasm.
Yeah.
Like, Prugo has a mouth with ooh! It's like, oh, we've got a Pruegasm. Then Laura, Paul Hollywood thought the decoration was way over the top. He's like, when I say less is more, this. Because she went way overboard with the white chocolate shards. But, like, it was pointless. They said the black currant was great, but the white chocolate was hidden and the cake was slightly overbaked. So she went from raw to overbaked. Nice work. Noel then put himself forward as a tribute to prevent Lottie or Sura going home.
No, Noel. You stay, Noel. We're here for you, Noel. One day someone will say yes to you getting naked in the tent. And
one day he's going to offer it up until it happens. Yeah. So Mark with a K was Star Baker because somebody had to be. I did ask midweek when I watched it, do we actually have to have a Star Baker? Can we just go, you know what, not this week?
Yeah, it was what it was.
You've got to earn it.
Yeah.
Sura went home, and again, I think having an inedible showstopper will do that to you every time. But that, I'll tell you what, I love Lottie, but if Sarah hadn't have made a completely raw cake, Lottie was going home.
Yep.
So that's your episode. Probably the fastest podcast we've ever done.
Yeah, I'm really hoping next week's a bit better.
It needed to be a lot better. So that's your lot for this week. We will be back next week with hopefully a much better episode of the Great British Bake Off.
We'll find out, won't we?
We'll find out together. We'll experience it all together,
I really
folks.
hope this isn't the start of a downhill run, because that would be quite disappointing.
That would be terrible. But until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
We'll catch you all later.